reading at the dark end of the street, Black Women, Race and Resistance, A New History of the Civil Rights Movement from Rosa Parks to the Rise of Black Power by McGuire. And our sessions it started June 3rd and they last through July 29th. They are from 6:30 to
Okay, can someone read points number 7 and 8 and question A, 8A?
Okay, I'll read that. The little case unfolded amid murderous violence as African Americans in North Carolina fought to integrate public schools and gain full citizenship. For example, in May 1970, blacks in Oxford torched the town's tobacco warehouses after 3 white men brutally murdered Henry Morrow in broad daylight for allegedly talking fresh to a white woman. Also, in 1971 in Wilmington, the controversies over school desegregation, busing, discrimination toward black students, the closure of all black schools, and the dismissals of beloved black teachers and administrators left many African Americans angry and resentful. Fueling this rancor in Wilmington, the Rights of White People, a white supremacist organization, terrorized blacks and incited violence. White racists and black militants exchanged gunfire, while black snipers fired at police officers, many of whom were members of the Ku Klux Klan. The National Guard patrolled the streets. The storefronts and businesses regularly went up in flames. Accused of arson, but primarily guilty of leading a boisterous movement for Black Power, Ben Chavis, a field organizer for the United Church of Christ Commission on Racial Justice, was sentenced to prison along with 9 others implicated in the racial conflagration. They became known as the Wilmington 10. Angela Davis, an outspoken prison reform activist and an icon of the Black Power movement, used her organization, the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, to launch a campaign for their defense. It was through her work on the Wilmington 10 case that she heard about Joan Little's plight in Washington, North Carolina. And then question A is, why did McGuire devote so much time in this chapter to describing the social and political environment of the late 60s and early 70s?
Thank you. Any takers?
Well, I think because she did a lot of she also did a lot of comparisons between the 40s to the 70s to show how much progress had been made. Though through the chapter I felt like none had been made. You got a few cases here and there that were acquitted or that were indicted, but not really. But I think it was to show the progress, really, the difference between Joan Little having her case acquitted and in 1944 having Recy Taylor's attackers not be indicted. So I think that it gave a nice look into how progressive the 60s and 70s were, because this is, to me, from reading the book, the most time where black people stood out violently, more hostile in terms of not just marches, but the Black Power movement, the rifles and the uniforms and the after school programs for the kids, like being very innovative. And that's different than the 40s. And I think it just made a layout to understand how she was able to be acquitted in the 70s.
Yeah. Anybody else?
No, I absolutely agree with Randie. It was definitely a change in the time. They weren't very concerned with being respectable as getting stuff done by any means necessary. So, absolutely agree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in terms of the question, why did McGuire devote so much time to describing the social and political environment of the late 60s and early 70s. Because she did. The chapter really is, I think, dominated by the blue context. And I think it's, I think it's simply because were it for that political context, Joan Little would have, roasted in the electric chair. There's no way that she could have been acquitted without all of the social change that had gone on up until that point. Randie, I'm proud to say that Venita and I were teenagers during this period.
It was good, Randie.
I heard. My parents loved it, from what they can remember.
Yes, it was very good.
I was just thinking, not to cut anyone off. I was surprised in this
Yeah,
chapter.
those
I don't know
were
if
good
I missed it,
times.
but did she ever mention did McGuire ever mention Shirley Chisholm?
No.
I don't think
And that
so.
was surprising to me because she ran for president as the first. She ran for president, so I'm just so surprised that she didn't mention that.
Well, now you sound like Farrah.
In terms of the changes.
Well, yeah, but I mean, actually, I think, as you said, in, one of our very first meetings. Hello, Joe. I see you keep trying to get in. Thank you.
Hey.
As you said, Randie, there's but so much you can get in a book, in a single book. And so, while she covers a lot of ground, there's also a lot that she does not mention. Whether it's because she was suggesting because she didn't consult with the right sources, or whether she just, had reached her limit on what she could actually include. But, they were definitely changing times and hopeful times. And she also mentions the backlash that was occurring, at the same time. She talks about Richard Nixon, aka Tricky Dick. And, so to me, the way that I have always described the nonprofit environment for like the last 40, 50 years or so is that in the 60s, the country blew up. It just blew up. And the philanthropic world started just throwing money at nonprofit organizations, just do something, calm the people down. And they didn't really much care, whether or not your program was designed well or was effective or had good outcomes or anything like that. By 1980, when Ronald Reagan came to town, we started to see this call for accountability. But what's really coming out now, as we learn about that ALEC group, what is it? The help me, Georgette. The is it Association for Legislative something?
It's something like that.
Yeah, but my point is that while we thought we were gaining all this new power and freedom and equality in the 60s and 70s, and we were, feeling good about that, the forces of reaction were steadily and quietly putting the pieces of their plan in place. And so Ronald Reagan was sort of a visible marker of, okay, we're tired of all this freedom talk. But organizations like ALEC were forming in the 1970s and quietly going around creating like this master plan to jerk us in the way that everyday people are being jerked today. So yeah, we had the illusion, I would say, of a greater measure of freedom, but more was going on there. So McGuire talks about some of it. She talks about, the white citizens and the backlash, but all this invisible backlash that was happening at the same time, and is now quite well organized and well funded. Venita, did you want to add to that question, or Joel? Joel, we are on question 8A.
Okay.
Anything?
I've been listening to the commentary on YouTube, even though I wasn't getting in, so I'm pretty abreast of what you all are talking about. Good dialogue.